I have good memories with you. I hope you have good memories with me too. Among the changes introduced by our president of the study course, Lamberti, we have some modification also in the final works that were thought in order to meet your expectation, your, let's say, engagements, your experiences, and that are the result of reasoning we had on the results of the final works over the last 5 years, that is, since the Master of Science was launched here in Como. First of all, how many of you are first year students? Okay, a good majority. And how many of the second year students are already following a thesis? Okay, very good. So it's a good audience. Let's start with a very simple question. What is a final work? Simple, it's not so true that it is simple. First of all, a final work is an exam, the last one, hopefully. But it is different as an exam because instead of having an exam in which you have a professor disclosing knowledge, you learn this knowledge and you repeat the knowledge you get from the professor, you are the one discovering and disclosing the knowledge. You develop the knowledge and you share it with professors. Okay, so in general terms, it's not an exam in which the professor already knows at the start what is the right answer, but it is an exam in which you develop the answer. Or better, you develop both the question and the answer. So it's a research work and aimed at creating new knowledge. Of course, this knowledge is not about your favorite football team or your best Italian dish, but it is about essential new knowledge in the fields of science, management science especially, or economic science or industrial engineering science. So actually, you have to disclose new knowledge about something you have learned in this study course, deepening what you have seen during the courses, and disclosing essential new wisdom. And you have not only to discover, you have also to present. So it's about generating knowledge and communicating knowledge. If you think about what most of you will do in the first 40 years of their career, it's what you're going to do. Of course, not at the research level, maybe at the managerial level. So it's a project in which you have to test yourself. And what are the characteristics of the final work? 3 characteristics. First of all, it's a new work. It means that it is your, not anybody else. It must be novel. So plagiarism is not accepted. What is plagiarism? Is pretending to be the owner or the creator of some knowledge you are not creator of. So for instance, copy and pasting from Wikipedia is plagiarism. No smile, it's what a lot of you try to do in the first part of the final work. Professors, after the severe guard of Professor Lamberti, which is very, very severe, introduced some routines and softwares for checking if the final works, that is, final work is a document actually, is true, is novel, it is not an act of plagiarism. If an act of plagiarism is detected, first of all, you have to rewrite the final work. Second of all, you'll have disciplinary action against you. Okay? So, absolutely no plagiarism. Second, it must be something logically straightforward. That is, it has to make some sense reading your work. Once again, don't smile. It's a very common problem also for people like me, which do research every day. I do research, I make research, and then I read my report on my research, and it has no sense. It is totally possible when you lose the broader picture. So the logical straightforwardness is an extremely important characteristic of the final work. Logical straightforwardness means also ability to communicate properly what you obtained. Here there is this comic. I don't know if you can see everything. Here it is written garage sale. And here I'm selling my garage. What's so hard to understand about that? The fact that garage sale doesn't mean that you are selling a garage. This is exactly the kind of mistake that, let's say, neglects the logical straightforwardness in your final work. You gotta make sense out of what you did in your final work. Third, methodological straightforwardness. Methodological straightforwardness means that you have a problem, you have to solve this problem, and when you try to solve this problem with your final work, you have to use the tools, the methodologies, the instruments that are the most correct for these objectives. So if you want to know on average how old is Italian people, on average, a single interview with a person is not a good methodology. If you want to know in detail what Professor Michela Navaldi has in mind when she rebuilt the study course, the Master of Science, it's not a good methodology to ask me. Okay? So, in this perspective, you gotta fit the shoes of the work. This kind of situation is not the correct one. You have also to size your effort and to use the tools that are the best for the objectives you are willing to accomplish. About methodology, as Professor Lamberti just told you, there are some seminars that we will organize in order to improve your methodological skills. And just to be clear, Professor Lamberti is much more politically correct than me. My personal idea is that everybody of you should attend these methodological seminars, not only because they are useful for the final work, but because they are very useful also in your working life. Because they give you the instruments, the tools, the knowledge that is necessary to analyze a problem. And as I said before, for the next 40 years, you're going to analyze and solve problems. So this kind of stuff is quite useful. And moreover, there is a second, let's say, more pragmatic cause for attending the seminars, that is, the content of these seminars will be given for granted by your supervisor. So nobody is going to explain you again what you will see in the methodological seminars. Okay? So, going a little bit more in detail, who are the people involved in the final work? Independently from the kind of final work, there are two main figures. The student, of course. The student is purely responsible for the content of the work. This is the reason why plagiarism will be prosecuted harshly. And in general, we have a maximum number of 2 students for thesis, for final work. The second one is the supervisor. The supervisor is either a professor or an assistant professor at Politecnico di Milano, which signs the work, which means that he or she testifies that the work is appropriate, that is valuable for granting you the graduation. So the supervisor must certify that the work is valuable, so you have to interact as a student with the supervisor. And the supervisor decides whether or not to start the final work with you. So the logic is, there is a topic, either proposed by the supervisor or by you. You propose it to the supervisor, or the supervisor proposes it to you. If you agree on the content, then you have a final work. Okay? Then there are some other figures that are involved, if applicable. First of all, the co-supervisor, which is a person, generally either a PhD student, a research fellow, or an assistant professor, working with a supervisor and helping you checking and reviewing the work. And the discussant. The discussant is a professor, an assistant professor at Politecnico, which reviews the final work once you completed it, in case of research dissertation. That is one of the possible forms of final work that I'm going to introduce shortly. So the discussant is someone who reviews the work before you discuss it. He doesn't say anything about changing the work. He just gets your final work finished and controls it. We have introduced a third final work kind from this year on. Maybe the ones of you that are the second year student may remember that there are two main kinds of work. Thesis, short thesis, let's say your tesi senza controllo relatore, and thesis or thesis with discussant. We introduced three kinds of work because we acknowledge that a lot of students, for instance, have working experience and stage internships and so on during their study course, and they want to focus their final work on this kind of situation. This had not the peculiarity, neither of the short thesis nor of the thesis. So, in this perspective, we introduced three main forms: project, thesis without discussant, and dissertation with discussant and defense. Let's start from the project. The project is a report on an empirical activity. I don't know, an internship, a stage, a working experience, a collaboration with a research group that is strictly limited to empirism, data gathering, data analysis, and so on. Or it could be the development of an entrepreneurial idea. Another thing that a lot of students propose as final work. You have a business idea to develop after your graduation. You want to develop a business plan. Okay, you can prepare and develop this business plan within the project. We know that in business strategy, for instance, there is the business planning phase. Of course, we are talking about another business plan, a new business plan. Once again, because we are talking about a new work. The expected length of the report would be about 50,000 words, 30 pages, something like this. And the work is evaluated by the supervisor and by another professor. For students enrolled before 2011-2012, that is for you. Methodological seminars are mandatory if you want to graduate with a project. So once again, if you are particularly interested in a project as the form of your final work, you are urged to attend the methodological seminar.
Just an exception, sorry,
Yeah.
but just an exception. I know that this will be very unlikely, but make the hypothesis that you need to finish before August, so it means July. And you want to downgrade your thesis to a project. This is an exception, is you don't have the possibility to follow the seminars. So in this case, you should discuss with your supervisor and say, I think that there is the possibility of the project. I know that the methodological seminars are compulsory. Can I have the possibility to downgrade my thesis to the project and so graduate in July? Okay, so this is the only exception for people who graduate in July, okay? So he needs to finish very soon.
Thank you very much. So the project is either a business plan or the report on a stage internship or whatever else. It's a shorter work. It takes a little bit less time. It is suited with people who are interested in having these internships and graduating soon. Okay? The second form is the thesis without discussant, currently known also as THESIS. And it is an empirical testing of an existing state-of-the-art scientific framework or an exploratory grounded research. That is a research in which, starting from a general definition of the topic, you want to somehow refine a little bit the concept. Okay? So, or either a systematic literature review, that is a particular way to approach the literature review in practice. The expected length of the report is about 60,000 words, 100 pages, 120 pages, more or less. And the work is evaluated by the supervisor and by the commission in the day you are graduating. Finally, you have the dissertation with discussion and defense. The dissertation with discussion and defense is a real research work in which you start from the analysis of state-of-the-art literature. You develop a framework for interpreting reality, that is the theory you are developing and you are testing. You empirically test this theory and you discuss the results. In this case, the work is evaluated by the supervisor, but also a discussant will be involved. You have to deliver the work on average more or less 1 month before the discussion. The discussant will take your final work. Your supervisor and the discussant will judge your work, and also the commission will give a kind of increment to this mark. Since it is different, the scope of the new knowledge disclosed through the final work, also when there will be the presentation of the work, you will have different time. Projects that are the narrowest work will have a maximum time for presentation of 5 minutes. Short thesis, a maximum time of 10 minutes, and research dissertation will have a difference of 15 minutes. That is more or less 10 minutes for presenting and 5 minutes for discussing and defending with the discussant. Of course, being the projects, the final works, different in terms of scope, in terms of wide, in terms of complexity, there will be different levels of interaction with the supervisor, different increments to the mark attainable, different efforts required, and finally, different levels of uncertainty. Let's start from the project. A project will require at least 3 meetings with the supervisor. The first meeting in which you introduce each other and you decide what to talk about in your project. An intermediate meeting in which you will decide if you're doing good or not. And a final meeting in which the supervisor certifies that you have accomplished your goals. Since the work will require, on average, an effort of 3 full-time months, of course, it is totally indicative, it depends on you, it's your work, not your supervisor's work. But in general, we may assume that 3 full-time months, including the internship and so on, could be enough for getting a good result. The increment you may attain goes from -1, for instance, in case of plagiarism or in case of very poor work, to 3 points on 110. You start from your GPA, you translate it in 110, and then you sum the increment you attain with the thesis. The maximum increment is 3 points. A thesis without discussant will require several periodical meetings with the supervisor or co-supervisor. In general terms, it requires some 6 full-time months. And it can give you an increment up to 5 points. The research dissertation can give you up to 8 points. 7 is the maximum increment, but in case of exceptionality, that is, you discover a formula for transforming water into wine, you can get the 8 points, and also a religion for you. The average effort is 9 full-time months, more or less. But the great diversity, let's say, besides the increment in the 3 work is the uncertainty. In general terms, in a project, you have to report something you have already done. So in this perspective, if you do everything it is required to you, there is a very low uncertainty about the graduation date, for instance. As for the thesis without discussant, there is an average too low uncertainty, because since it is an empirical exercise or a theoretical work, in general terms, the great, let's say, source of uncertainty is just about how difficult it is for you to get empirism and so on. It is much more uncertain the length, the time span of research dissertation with defense, just because actually, in order to be discussed and defended as a discovery what you are going to do, it must have some kind of quality. So in case you develop your theory, you gather the empirism, and the empirism doesn't confirm your theory, or the empirism is unsatisfactory, you have to gather new empirism. And this gives you delay in the time. So the project is very low in terms of uncertainty and very narrow in terms of scope. The research dissertation is very high in uncertainty and very large in scope. Thesis without discussant is at the mid-course. Okay? Okay? How to apply? Two ways. The first way is the supervisor proposes the topic. If you check the personal pages of the professor and the assistant professor, it is not unlikely, or better, it is quite common, that professor proposes a list of topics. You read this proposal with 1, 2, 3, 5 of these professors according to your personal interests, the courses you like the most during the course, a course that you have not attended but you were interested to deepen and so on. And you obtain some kind of information about what's running on in terms of the research at Politecnico. You send an email, you fix a meeting with the professor, and you discuss whether to continue, whether there is the possibility to develop the final work on this topic. The other way around is the student proposes the topics. This is particularly suited for projects, for instance. I am doing an internship in this company. Is it possible to develop the project around this internship? Or I have this entrepreneurial idea. Do you think it could be suited for a project to develop the business planning? You prepare a 1 to 2 pages presentation of your idea, and you submit it to the professor that, in your opinion, could be the most interested, or to the ones that are the ones you would like to work with. Of course, this kind of procedure could be good as well also for thesis or for dissertations. That is, you have a topic that in your opinion is particularly relevant under a theoretical or managerial viewpoint, and you want to develop it through a research. Okay, you prepare a 1 to 2 pages summary and you submit it to professors. Also in this case, is everything clear? It is not a good way, or better, it is impossible for you to prepare your final work and submit it finished to your supervisor asking for signing. This is not the way it works. When to apply? That is, when is the right time for you to take a final work? First of all, when you have enough time. If you have 13 exams, 15 seminars and an internship, maybe you don't have enough time to follow your final work. Second, when you have an idea, especially for entrepreneurial ideas or things like this. Third, when you have a comprehensive perspective on the fields of interest. I know that most of you follow the marketing course in the first semester, in the first term, and the assistant professor in the marketing course is extraordinary. So in this perspective, everybody fall in love with marketing, and everybody want to have the final work in marketing. I know that there's nothing I can do if I am the best, but of course I'm joking. But my suggestion is please wait the end of the first year, so that you have at least a comprehensive overview about what management, economics and industrial engineer does. So in general terms, from June to September of the first year, if you enroll in September, is the right time to start wondering about the final work. That's it. For any further information, these are my contacts.